Well, one of the interesting things about running an internet-based TV station is that you get lots of statistics and analytics on the different shows. And our next guest is by far our most popular guest for 2 months running. And I think it's because he's the only person in Canada telling the other side of the story on Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland's disastrous NAFTA negotiations. I'm talking, of course, about my friend Manny Montenegrino, who is a former lawyer to Stephen Harper, and he's with Think Sharp. Manny, great to welcome you back to the program. Nice to have you again.
Thank you for having me, Ezra.
I want to start off by showing you a stunning video. We got a lot to talk about NAFTA, but I want to show you a clip, and I know you've seen this. Chrystia Freeland, our foreign minister, flew back from NAFTA negotiations to attend a feminist conference and to speak on a panel called Taking on the Tyrant. And I want to play a video clip for you from that panel. It takes 3 full minutes, Manny, but I think you've got to see it to believe it. Can I play that clip? And then we'll come back and talk about that clip, and then we'll talk about the NAFTA negotiations. Okay, so let me just set it up for one more second. This is in Toronto. This is at a feminist conference hosted by Heather Reisman, who's a feminist entrepreneur in Canada. This video clip was the introduction to the panel. The panel was called Taking on the Tyrant, and Chrystia Freeland was one of the 2 star guests. Without further ado, let me show you the event Chrystia Freeland spoke at.
There's a name for Viktor Orban's system of government. He calls it illiberal democracy. It's basically the primacy of populist nationalism over individual freedoms.
On the campaign trail, Italy's new interior minister used hardline rhetoric to fire up the voters.
Fake, disgusting news.
This was a direct act by the Russian state against our country.
She's loved. We love her, right? We love her. That was wonderful. Did you bask in that moment? That's lovely.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs. My name is Chrystia Freeland, and I'm also the Member of Parliament for University Rosedale. So we are now in my riding, and isn't it a great riding? And yeah, we are on the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. Et au fin, c'est un très grand plaisir d'être ici avec vous, surtout avec les femmes canadiennes, et l'appui, votre appui est très, très important pour moi. Merci beaucoup.
Well, it could go on, but it gets only worse. Manny Montenegrino, that was a Trump-bashing video. And I don't know if she would have seen the whole video before she got to the event, but she would have known the event was called Taking on the Tyrant. She would have been briefed about what the panel would require from her because she was one of only 2 guests there. And even after she saw the video, and let's give her the benefit of the doubt and say she didn't know it was going to be a vicious attack on Donald Trump as some fascist, she applauded it, she basked in it, And she said, yeah, this is my moment. And then she did a little virtue signaling. That's insane for anyone in Canadian cabinet. But for someone who's doing a NAFTA negotiation, Manny, what do you make of that?
Well, it just supports my premise. I've been saying, as you know, for months and perhaps almost a year, no, I have tweeted it a year ago, that is its main purpose. The purpose of this government is to win the next election, and they see the best way to do it is to create a battle between Trump and this government, and to prove that Canadians will now vote for this government. And this is just more evidence. It's alarming. I mean, you wouldn't see Mexico, who worked very hard, some 20, 30 days in a row to craft a deal, to agree to a deal. They didn't break up and go and do these videos that are insulting to their negotiating partner, their biggest trade partner. So it's just more evidence. And I think, Ezra, if you see it from that point of view, it's very clear that the purpose is to create this, what I'll call a division between Canada and America, or Trump more particularly, and this prime minister. And that's why it works. And that's why there was great applause. And but it's not about trade, because if it was about trade, any reasonable person would not have done or gone to that in the middle of a NAFTA negotiation. So it just supports my premise, and it's alarming. I mean, I was very saddened when I saw that. I couldn't believe it, but it supports my premise. And there's more.
Yeah. You know, when you're a senior cabinet minister, I mean, foreign minister is a very senior position. You have a lot of staff. You have people called advance people. They would go to the event in advance. They would check out who's the introducer. They would check where's the seat, where's the glass of water, like down to every detail. And they would have known absolutely the nature of the event. They probably would have seen that video. But let's just say, for the benefit of the doubt, they didn't. She knew she was going to an anti-Trump event. But Manny, what gets me is it wasn't a substantive disagreement with Trump. It wasn't, we're going to defend this industry, or it wasn't even saying we want Chapter 19, the dispute resolution mechanism, or we want the dairy cartel. You can agree or disagree with that, but that's substantive. This was pure Trump derangement, pure demonizing Trump. It was all personal, and that's what's so alarming here. Mexico surely has substantive differences with Trump, but they're not twisting a knife in him in the middle of a negotiation.
Well, they want a deal. I mean, if before this video came out, Ezra, there were more alarming signs that supports my premise that really this government does not want a NAFTA deal. What this government does want is to create a division, a Trump hate narrative to get Trump hate votes in Canada. And it's that simple. I mean, let's go. You might recall there were 2 points that were not negotiable 6 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago. The Prime Minister stood up and said, these are not negotiable. We will not have a NAFTA deal. And they were the 5-year sunset clause and no deal without Mexico. I mean, the President of the United States offered a bilateral deal almost a year ago. And they said, absolutely not. We will not do a deal without Mexico. And we will not have this 5-year sunset clause. Well, those are both gone. Those were the only impediments to a deal. Now they're gone. And what are they substituted with? They substituted with 2 new that we've never heard of. The cultural. Now we're here defending cultural issues. That's now the line in the sand. That's the red line. And that wasn't said a year ago. So it's disingenuous to bring it up now. As well, as you mentioned, Chapter 19. Chapter 19 is a dispute resolution system that's in NAFTA. And it hasn't been used for the last 10 years or so. It basically is a clause that really has no useful effect anymore. What they want to do is they simply, the negotiators want to move it from a panel where people select who's on the panel to the courts. Now, most people trust and rely on the courts. And what has our Prime Minister said about Chapter 19? And you might recall this, and it's in my 59th tweet, if you will, because now I have a series of tweets of evidence. But the Prime Minister said, we know we have a president that doesn't always follow the rules. And that's why he's not supportive of Chapter 19 changes. Now, Ezra, no one in the media, no lawyer, no one has asked, what do you mean by that, Mr. Prime Minister? We know we have a president that doesn't follow the rules. Well, Chapter 19 is a resolution that goes to the courts. No president, not this president or any president, could pick up the phone and talk to a judge. Mm-hmm. It is insulting to the judiciary of America or Canada. It's insulting to this president, and it's insulting to future president. Mm-hmm. And when President Trump is gone and there's a new president, no president will pick up the phone and start interfering with a court on a dispute mechanism under Chapter 19. That tells me that it's insincere, and no lawyer has even questioned it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, by nature, whenever you're negotiating with someone, you have a difference of opinion. I think it was Shimon Peres, the late Israeli leader, who said, you make peace with your enemies. That's the most dramatic example of that. If you're ever in a negotiation, it's with someone you have a disagreement with, fine. But you have to have some good faith. And what I find here is you've just raised some excellent points that maybe substantively Canada is not even negotiating in good faith if we're coming up with last-minute objections that our negotiators haven't even mentioned before. But I think you don't even need to, detect bad faith in the substance when you see I don't even know how to describe what Chrystia Freeland was doing there. It was like she was leading a rally for the Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wing of the Democrats. And the weird virtue signaling, the selfie style, let me say something in English and French, let me boast about my riding, let me give a shout out to Aboriginal issues. It was a level of insincerity and virtue signaling. I just don't even understand how that can be accepted in the first rank of international relations. Manny, I think you're right. Yeah. I think we're doomed.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, if you start with the premise, do they want a NAFTA deal? Now, as you know, businesses set up companies every month, every day. Mm-hmm. And uncertainty tells businesses where to go. Canada has been under a cloud of uncertainty. The NAFTA deal is not done. Mexico understood this. That's why they wanted the deal quickly. In case this new business wants to set up in Mexico, we are on board, come here. But now, as we delay, there are billions of dollars that are not invested in Canada. We've had that pipeline fiasco that basically says to the world, if you're in oil and pipelines, don't come to Canada. Now with NAFTA, if you're setting up any business, well, we're not sure we're going to do this deal. We're going to continue to poke the president, and God knows how long that will take. So they'll set up. These are billions of dollars in jobs that are not seen today, but will be seen in the future, lost to Canada. Mm-hmm. So it is clearly intentional in my I continue to find evidence. And as you say, Ezra, that little speech in Toronto by the foreign minister who's negotiating this trade deal is the last piece of evidence you ever need to know that this government really doesn't have its primary goal is not NAFTA. Its primary goal is to win the next election, and it's to win it by getting Trump hate votes. Yeah. And if that means NAFTA fails, or if that means NAFTA gets delayed and the economy suffers, it really doesn't matter. I mean, the Prime Minister is already, as you may have seen, the Prime Minister has already warned that there may be potential disastrous effect to the auto sector. Temporary. He's already warned that. Why would a prime minister warn that? That is something that you could not possibly have happen. But he's already warned it, and it's already been, publicized. Yeah.
Well, that's what I am having trouble coming to terms with. And I remember when you first put your thesis to me a few weeks ago that Trudeau wants this to fail and Trump wants it to fail, so Trump can pull those factories from Southern Ontario, and I think there's a small car industry in Quebec too, pull those into battleground states like Ohio and Michigan and maybe Pennsylvania and Indiana, because Trump would win. He'd bring the jobs home, the factories home. He doesn't care about votes in Ontario and Quebec, and Trudeau would win in that he could get all the anti-Trump. So in a weird way, they both win. But here's what I don't get about this, and answer me this if you can. You talked about the pipelines that won't get built. Those are jobs that don't exist now that we won't get, and that's a crying shame, but we won't feel it as much as a job that does exist that's taken away. So let's say we've given up thousands of jobs in pipelines that will never be built and oil sands projects that will never be built. We won't sense that loss because it didn't exist to begin with. Whereas if you actually shut down an existing factory, there will be real people who really do lose their jobs, and it will be tangible and visible and painful to families. How can Trudeau think that enormous body blow to Ontario and partially to Quebec of shutting down those factories won't be a disaster economically and also politically? Is running against Trump really a stronger asset than creating 100,000, 160,000 unemployed new families?
Well, I can only conclude that their answer, the Liberals' answer, is yes, or we wouldn't be here at the brink of a disaster. It may only be 2 or 3 ridings, but how many more votes that are across Canada? And it's 24/7 media on everything that Trump's done wrong, and it's now starting to happen with Ford. It's amazing. But so yes, it might affect 1 or 2 ridings, but the number of people that will blame Trump, we will all kind of be on that side. So they've done the metrics, and yes, 100,000 jobs, a few ridings is not as big as the big picture. That's my estimation. I haven't found any evidence to disprove what my theory is. And I'm not, listen, every day I wake up, I hope that I will. I'd hope that I'd find it. But when the Prime Minister just 1 or 2 days ago said in getting the people ready, saying, be careful, there may be a impact, a disruption to the auto sector, that's already saying, hey, we like where we're going and we don't mind if Trump does this.
You know, part of me thinks, well, maybe this is brinksmanship. Maybe this is banter. This is people taking positions in a negotiation, and it's just high drama, but it'll all be resolved. But I want to believe that, but I don't sense that, and I mean, I don't understand why Chrystia Freeland, and I understand that Gerald Butts, the principal secretary to Trudeau, and Katie Telford, the chief of staff to Trudeau, they were down in Washington too, but they're not professional negotiators. They're political activists, they're speechwriters, they're political managers, they have talents, that's for sure. But I don't understand why we don't have professional negotiators doing the negotiating.
Well, you know, we have negotiators that are negotiating for what they want. I mean, you keep going back to the point that there are professional negotiators, and they're all doing the NAFTA deal. Canada probably has some great negotiators, but they're being given the marching orders from the government, and you know, so their premise or their hope is something else. So it is happening as it's played out. I mean, Ezra, you started with the clip, and I will go with that. Under no circumstance would anyone ever attend a forum that says Trump is a tyrant in the last days of a NAFTA deal, especially, I mean, we're not even talking about an MP. We're not talking about, we had an MP that was removed by the Liberal government, a cabinet minister, that when she spoke poorly against George Bush, she was removed. Now, that's a sensitivity that we once have. That's not the case. We have the most senior cabinet minister who is in the last days of negotiating, going to this seminar, calling Trump a tyrant. That has to tell Canadians a lot. It speaks great volumes that NAFTA is secondary to another cause, and the other cause is political. Plain and simple. And I would love anyone to give me any evidence that I'm wrong, because it is, I everywhere I go, and as you know, Ezra, I now have a tweet thread on that's up to about 60 tweets that simply point to facts, and this last one is just another one that leads me to the conclusion that the primary goal is not NAFTA.
Manny, you've been very generous with your time, and we spent a few minutes watching that clip. I have just one last question for you, because I just want to know your thoughts on it. If one day comes when Trump announces that 20% tariff on our autos, and he said that would likely be the figure, What kind of domino effect would that have on our dollar, on our interest rates, on consumer confidence? What would happen the day he announces those tariffs?
You know, Ezra, I have no idea what would happen to the stock market, our dollar. It would be devastating, but you know, the fact that we're this close and we're only fighting for Chapter 19 and culture. And if you look at the issue of culture in Canada, I mean, you turn on CBC and catch your news. In the first 50% of it is American. It's always American. I mean, so to sit there and say that we are going to come to the brink of disaster, our stock market, our jobs, our auto industry, for Chapter 19, where a judge gets to decide a dispute, where Liberals normally want judges to decide disputes. They're very happy about that. And the issue of culture, it doesn't make sense to me at all.
Well, Manny, as usual, you leave me more informed, but less happy.
Yeah, well, I listen, I'm not a happy guy. I love this country. I have fought for this country, as you know, Ezra, for almost 30 years. I've taken a lot of risks for this country, and I am a very, very unhappy guy. The last video that you started this broadcast with just deepened my sadness.
Yeah. Well, Manny, I'm glad you're fighting for Canada by speaking the truth to our government. And I think the fact that your videos are so popular is a reflection of the fact people just can't find thoughtful criticism elsewhere in the media. So I thank you for being here today. And I hope we can keep in touch with you in the weeks ahead until this issue is resolved. All right, take care, my friend. Thanks very much. That's Manny Montenegrino, a former lawyer to Stephen Harper and the CEO of Think Sharp. That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show, weekdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Every day I do a monologue, interview a guest, and read my fan mail and my hate mail. To subscribe, go to therebel.media/shows.